In the autumn of 2024, I, Sam, embarked on a journey to attend a renowned college in the heart of Massachusetts. A place filled with ivy-covered buildings and a history as thick as the fog that often shrouded the campus. An amalgamation of excitement and apprehension tugged at my heartstrings, a symphony of emotions, as I stepped into the next chapter of my life. The college's grandeur was unsettling in its own peculiar way, its ancient architecture casting long, ominous shadows that seemed to dance with the cold wind. The trees, bare from the autumn chill, were like skeletal fingers reaching out as if attempting to grasp something. The wind, an unwelcome visitor, whispered tales of yesteryears, carrying a coldness that bit into my skin, a harsh greeting indeed. As I stepped onto the campus, a chill ran down my spine. I should have taken that as a sign. The dormitory, an old Victorian building, stood eerily against the backdrop of the moonlit sky. Its Gothic architecture, complete with turrets and gargoyles, was a stark contrast to the modern buildings that surrounded it. It was almost as though it had been lifted from another era and placed here, its walls housing a century of secrets. As I settled into my new home, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. The hallways echoed with an odd, resonant hum that seemed to come from the very heart of the building. The air was always a few degrees colder than it should have been. The rooms held a musty smell, as if they were holding their breath, waiting for something or someone. I began to notice strange occurrences. Lights would flicker without reason, doors would creak open despite being firmly shut. And then, there were the whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs that danced in the corners of my room, always just out of reach. They started off as a soft rustle, like the sound of leaves in the wind. But as days turned into weeks, they grew in volume and intensity. I would wake up in the middle of the night, my heart pounding, the whispers echoing in my ears. They seemed to seep out from the walls, rising and falling like a sinister lullaby. I could never quite catch the words, but the tone, the cadence, it was anything but welcoming. It felt invasive and menacing, a spectral invasion of my personal space. The feeling of being watched became a constant companion. Every corner held a potential observer, every shadow a lurking presence. The whispers, the cold, the unexplained phenomena, they all pointed towards one chilling conclusion. I was not alone in the dormitory. Every night, the whispers grew louder, closer. I could almost make out words. But the one thing I knew for certain, they weren't friendly. The rumors about room 303 began to circulate among the students, each tale more horrifying than the last. Whispers of a sorrowful spirit trapped within its walls, a remnant of a tragic event that took place years ago. The story goes that a student, overwhelmed by the pressures of academia and life, chose to end his suffering within the confines of that very room. Since then, his restless spirit supposedly haunts room 303, its sorrow seeping into the very fabric of the dormitory. My name is Sam, and as the stories of room 303 reached my ears, a chill ran down my spine. The inexplicable events I had been experiencing started to connect with the haunting tales. Nightly whispers that seemed to echo from nowhere, my belongings mysteriously moving, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. It was as if an unseen force was pulling me towards room 303, a force that was both terrifying and morbidly fascinating. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I decided to delve deeper into the mystery. I began to interview students who had lived in room 303, hoping their accounts would shed some light on the situation. Each story was a chilling echo of the last, filled with tales of eerie occurrences and an overwhelming sense of despair. As my investigation progressed, I felt an undeniable connection between my experiences and the tales of room 303. It was as if the spectral entity was reaching out to me, desperate to share its story. The more I uncovered, the more I felt a pull towards the room, a magnetic attraction that was impossible to ignore. A sense of dread filled me as I finally stood before room 303, the epicenter of the haunting tales. The door, old and worn, seemed to hold 1,000 stories within its wooden frame. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the terror and anticipation coursing through my veins. With a deep breath, I reached out, my hand trembling as it made contact with the cold doorknob. The door creaked open, almost inviting me in. There I was, inside room 303, surrounded by an oppressive silence and a sense of impending doom. The air was thick, heavy with a dread I couldn't explain. It was as if the room itself was breathing, alive with a story it was desperate to share. Tucked away in a forgotten corner, I discovered an old, worn-out diary. It belonged to the student who once called this room home, the very soul whose tragic end had led to the room's haunting reputation. The diary, much like the room, was a silent testament to a tale of terror and despair. The entries were disturbing, to say the least. Each page was a raw, haunting glimpse into the student's life, a chronicle of his slow descent into a pit of madness. The words echoed my own experiences, my own fears. It was as if I was reading my own thoughts, my own nightmares penned down by another. The student wrote about the shadows that moved when no one was looking, the whispers that filled the silence of the night, the cold spots that appeared out of nowhere. He wrote about the sleepless nights, the paralyzing fear that gripped him, the growing sense of isolation as he was consumed by the room's malevolent presence. Each entry was more disturbing than the last, a chilling testament to the student's losing battle against an unseen entity. His words painted a picture of a mind spiraling into darkness, driven to the brink by an oppressive force that refused to let go. The diary was more than just a record of his experiences. It was a plea for help, a desperate cry lost in the void. It was a chilling reminder of the room's dark past and a forewarning of the fate that awaited me. As I turned the last page of the diary, a cold hand rested on my shoulder. I was not alone. With a cold sweat running down my face, I turned around, bracing myself for what I might see. There it was, the apparition. Its presence filled the room, painting the walls with a chilling aura that seemed to suck out all warmth. Its ghostly figure, a haunting reminder of room 303's dark past, floated silently in the dim light. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. I could feel my courage waning, replaced by a growing sense of dread. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but how could I? The door, my only exit, was locked from the outside. A cruel twist of fate, a cruel trick of the haunting. I could see the apparition advancing, its ghostly form becoming more defined with each passing second. Panic surged through me. I pounded on the door, desperate to escape, but it was too late. The ghostly figure advanced towards me. Then, everything went black. Fresh out of high school, I found myself on the threshold of a new chapter in my life. My name is Emily, and this is my story. Like most wide-eyed freshmen, I was a cocktail of eagerness and anxiety, ready to embrace the world of higher education. The campus was a mesmerizing mix of the old and the new, with historic buildings casting long, eerie shadows over modern facilities. As I unpacked my belongings in my dorm room, the sense of anticipation was palpable. The quaint charm of my room, with its creaking floorboards and antiquated furniture, felt like something out of a classic horror novel. Yet I was oblivious to the undercurrent of unease that lingered in the air. I was too caught up in the thrill of new beginnings, in the promise of endless possibilities. Little did I know, the old world charm of the university was concealing a horrific secret. Barely a few days into college, I stumbled upon something disturbing. The voice of Emily, our protagonist, resonates with a chilling uncertainty. Her story continues to unfold, taking us on a journey into the eerie depths of her new dormitory. Downstairs in the basement, there was this door. It was unlike any other door in the building. Old and rusty, it stood out against the freshly painted walls and modern fixtures. It seemed out of place, like a relic from a bygone era that refused to fade into oblivion. Just the sight of it gave me an uneasy feeling, a prickling sensation that ran down my spine. Emily's voice, even though steady, carries a hint of fear, a touch of the unknown. I remember standing there, staring at the door. Curiosity was gnawing at me, but something else was holding me back. It was as if the door was warning me to stay away. I laughed it off, telling myself it was just a door. But was it really just a door? Late one night, when the dorm was eerily quiet, I heard it. A strange noise coming from behind the door. It was faint, barely audible, like a whisper carried by the wind. I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks on me. Emily's voice drops to a whisper, as if to mimic the sound she heard that night, inviting us to share her fear and uncertainty. But the noises persisted, growing louder and more frequent. It was as if the door was trying to communicate, to tell me something. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself it was just the old building settling. But deep down I knew it was more than that. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was not right about that door. Emily's voice fades. leaving us with a cold, unsettling silence. The mystery of the door in the basement lingers, a haunting reminder of the unknown. What lies beyond the door? Only time will tell. That night, I had the most terrifying nightmare. A shiver ran down my spine as I remembered the details. My subconscious had conjured up a vision so horrifying, it was as if the very fabric of my reality was being torn apart. In this dream, I found myself standing in front of that locked door once again. This time, however, it swung open with an eerie creak, revealing an abyss beyond. A corridor stretched out before me, shrouded in darkness, the only sound being the echo of my own breath. As I stepped into this foreboding passage, the door slammed shut behind me, extinguishing the last vestiges of light and plunging me into an unending darkness. The contours of this labyrinthine maze were barely discernible in the gloom. The walls were damp and cool to touch, and I could sense a faint, musty smell filling the air around me. I began to navigate through the labyrinth, my fear mounting with each step. It was as if I was descending into the bowels of some monstrous entity, its guttural moans and whispers echoing off the stone walls. As I ventured further into the maze, the whispers intensified, morphing into chilling screams that seemed to reverberate from all directions. The screams were not of anger, but of fear, despair, and pain. Each one was a distinct voice, each one a different pitch and tone, yet they all merged into a cacophony of terror that chilled me to the bone. I tried to run, but the passages twisted and turned, always leading me deeper into the heart of the labyrinth. The screams grew louder, the whispers more insistent, the darkness more suffocating. The sense of dread was overwhelming. The feeling of being trapped in this nightmarish maze with no hope of escape was unbearable. And then, just as abruptly as it had begun, I was jolted awake. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, the echoes of those screams still ringing in my ears. I sat up, gasping for breath, the remnants of the nightmare clinging to me like a second skin. The nightmare had begun, and I could only hope that dawn would bring some respite. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't shake off the disturbing vision of the locked door from my mind. The chill it sent down my spine, the sense of foreboding it evoked, it was all too real. I decided to delve deeper, to uncover the mystery shrouded in the cold, ominous silence of the door. I started my quest for answers within the confines of the college itself. I approached my classmates, my dorm mates, anyone who could provide the slightest insight into the enigma. The responses, however, were mostly shrugs, perplexed looks, and whispers of old college myths. It was as if the door was a phantom, visible to me but invisible to the world. Undeterred, I made my way to the library. The hushed whispers of ancient books and the musty scent of time-worn pages felt oddly comforting. I scoured through old yearbooks, college newsletters, and newspaper clippings, hoping to find a clue. And then, there it was, buried amongst the yellowing sheets of an old newspaper. A chilling account of a student who had disappeared without a trace, decades ago. The last place they were seen? Near the locked door. The black and white photograph accompanying the article showed a young, smiling face, oblivious to the fate that awaited them. A cold shudder ran down my spine as I read the article over and over again. The room seemed to grow colder, the whispers of the library suddenly silent. The connection was undeniable, the eerie locked door, the haunting nightmare, and now, the disappeared student. It was as if pieces of a terrifying puzzle were falling into place. I couldn't help but wonder, was this just a coincidence? Or was I being pulled into a vortex of a horrifying past? A past that the college had tried to bury and forget. A past that was now clawing its way back to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged, to be remembered. I could feel it in my bones. The disturbing connection between my nightmare, the locked door, and the disappeared student. The question that haunted me was, should I open the door? There I was, Emily, standing in front of the locked door that held the truth behind the chilling incidents that had been plaguing my college life. The key, the one I'd found hidden away in the dusty corners of the library, was gripped tightly in my hand. My heart pounded in my chest, matching the rhythm of my indecision. It was a battle between my insatiable curiosity and the creeping dread that gnawed at the edges of my courage. Could I face whatever lay on the other side? Were the answers worth the risk? It felt as though the shadows were closing in, whispering their warnings into my ear. As I reached out to insert the key, I heard a whisper behind me, "Don't!" I turned around, but there was no one there. So what should I do? Should I open the door? The university campus is eerily quiet. Too quiet. A chill wind rustles through the barren trees, the only sound in the otherwise silent night. The once bustling campus, alive with the chatter of students and the hum of learning, has now succumbed to an unsettling calm. It's a quiet that is not comforting, but rather one that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. In the midst of this silence, two figures emerge from the campus library, their shadows stretching long and thin under the pale moonlight. Meet Mark, a studious psychology major who prefers the company of textbooks over people. He's the kind of guy who would rather spend his Friday nights deciphering Freud than partying. His glasses sit low on his nose, his eyes always filled with a thoughtful intensity. Walking beside him is Lisa, a vibrant art student whose laughter and energy could light up the darkest corners of this quiet campus. She's the kind of girl who paints with all the colors of the wind and finds beauty in the mundane. She's the yin to Mark's yang, the cheerful to his serious. They're an unlikely pair, these two, but they've found common ground in the library's hushed whispers and the shared stress of upcoming exams. Tonight, like so many nights before, they've spent hours poring over notes and textbooks, their minds buzzing with information and caffeine. The night stretches on, the campus's tranquility almost tangible. Their footsteps echo against the stone buildings as they walk, a rhythmic reminder of the life that once thrived here. They share a comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, their own world. Finally, they reach the crossroads, the point where their paths diverge. With a nod and a wave, they part ways, their shadows splitting and stretching towards their separate dorms. Mark and Lisa part ways at the crossroads, each heading to their separate dorms in the dimly lit campus. As they disappear into the darkness, the campus returns to its eerie silence, a silence that seems to whisper, "This is just the beginning." Mark enters his dorm room, immediately feeling a sense of unease. The air feels heavier, the silence more pronounced. It's as if the room itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Mark's eyes instantly fall on his usually cluttered desk, now hosting a single piece of paper. It's a note, hastily scrawled, bearing a message that makes his blood run cold. "Get out, you're in danger," it reads. The words seem to echo in the room, bouncing off the walls and burrowing into his mind. Mark feels his heart thumping against his ribcage, each beat a loud reminder of the ominous warning. He reaches for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dials Lisa's number. She picks up on the second ring, her voice a welcome distraction from the uneasiness crawling up his spine. He tells her about the note, his voice shaking as he reads out the chilling message. There's a pause on the other end of the line, the silence stretching out, amplifying the fear gnawing at him. Lisa, in her usual pragmatic way, tries to downplay the situation. She suggests it's probably a prank, a misguided attempt at humor by one of their classmates. He wants to believe her, to dismiss the note as nothing more than a tasteless joke. But a part of him, a part that's been growing since he set foot in the room, knows better. He thanks Lisa, her words offering some semblance of comfort, but the feeling of dread refuses to dissipate. He hangs up the phone, his gaze drifting back to the note. The words stare back at him, their warning as ominous as ever. Try as he might, he can't shake off the sense that he's being watched, that he's not alone. But as Mark hangs up the phone, he can't shake off the feeling that something is terribly wrong. He finds himself standing in the middle of his room, the message on the note echoing in his mind, a chilling reminder of the impending danger. Lisa, trying to shake off her worry for Mark, turns down a dark corridor towards her dorm. The emptiness of the hallway echoes around her as she quickens her pace, the silent whispers of the night creeping into her ears. The dim corridor, usually bustling with life, now seems eerie and unnerving, a stark contrast to the laughter and camaraderie that usually fills the air. Suddenly, a strange noise echoes from behind, a low, guttural growl that sends chills down her spine. She halts, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. She turns, her eyes straining in the dim light, looking for the source of the sound. At the far end of the corridor, a shadowy figure looms. It's hard to make out, but it's there, an intimidating silhouette etched against the faint light that filters in from a distant window. With a gasp, Lisa stumbles back, her blood running cold. She darts into her room, slamming the door shut behind her, the sound reverberating through the silent hallway. She fumbles with the lock, her hands shaking, her breath coming out in short, ragged gasps. The air in the room seems to close in on her, a sense of dread wrapping around her like a cold, icy shroud. She grabs her phone, her fingers flying over the keys as she dials Mark's number. Her voice, usually warm and cheerful, is shaking, a tremor of fear running through her words. She recounts the figure, the growl, the fear that's still coursing through her veins. She's hoping for reassurance, for Mark's calm voice to soothe her frayed nerves, but all she gets in return is silence. A chilling, deafening silence that seems to consume her. She calls out his name, her voice echoing through the room, the silence only growing louder in response. And then, just as suddenly, the line goes dead. The line goes dead, leaving Lisa in her room, alone and terrified. The silence of the night outside is now her only companion, a chilling reminder of the unknown threat that lurks in the shadows. Mark, now truly alarmed, races out of his room and towards Lisa's dorm. His heart pounds in his chest like a drum, echoing the rhythm of his fear. The usually bustling campus is eerily silent, amplifying every rustle of leaves underfoot, every whisper of the wind. As he runs, a chilling scream pierces the night air. It's a sound that freezes his blood, a sound that will haunt his dreams for years to come. He skids to a stop outside Lisa's dorm, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The door is ajar, an ominous invitation. He pushes it open, the creaking sound an eerie symphony in the silence. "Lisa!" he calls out, his voice trembling. No answer, just a deafening silence that fills the room, a silence that speaks volumes. The room is in disarray, furniture overturned, papers scattered everywhere, the scent of fear hanging heavy in the air. Lisa is nowhere to be found. Her absence fills the room, a gaping hole where a vibrant, lively presence used to be. His mind races, conjuring up images too horrifying to contemplate. His heart sinks, a stone dropping into the abyss of dread. He steps further into the room, his foot nudging something. He looks down to see Lisa's favorite pendant, its chain broken. He picks it up, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth it used to hold when it hung around Lisa's neck. It's a chilling reminder of the danger that lurks in the shadows, an unseen threat that hides in plain sight. His eyes scan the room one last time, stopping at the wall opposite him. His blood runs cold as he reads the message scrawled there. It's not written in ink, but something much darker, much more terrifying. His heart pounds louder, his breath catches in his throat. The words seem to leap out at him, each letter a harbinger of doom. "You're next." The threat hangs in the air, a chilling promise of what's to come. The unseen threat is no longer unseen, its message loud and clear. And as Mark steps further into the room, he notices a chilling message scrawled on the wall. "You're next."